This is Rosen Institute's Your Law Firm, where Lee Rosen and Ned Days cover management, marketing, finance, and new technologies for building the practice you deserve. Rosen Institute members received this episode early, as well as exclusive segments on improving your law firm's marketing strategy to uncover new opportunities and drive greater profit. An answer to a member question about how to structure and eat what you kill compensation arrangement for associates, as well as sessions from our pay-per-click advertising program. Get access to everything you're missing at roseninstitute.com/join. Here's Lee Rosen.
It's good to be with you from London. Last week I mentioned the dispute we were having with Airbnb about the air conditioning. We got that all worked out, and we're in a very nice Hyatt hotel where the air conditioner is strong. The heat has cooled off just a little bit, but I think we're going to have another heat wave coming up before long. London is a terrific city to visit. Great food. The theater scene is just spectacular. Of course, there's all the history and wandering the streets, people watching, and so much interesting architecture. But at this point, after 10 years of traveling, one of the things that we love most about London is that everybody here speaks English. It's so incredibly easy for us to function when we're here. In so many places around the world, we have all this difficulty doing basic things like figuring out which restroom is for the men and which is for the women, buying toothpaste or ordering off the menu, all of these things that are so hard in a foreign language. London, with all of these English speakers, it's just a pleasure to visit.
It's time for your tech tip. I got an email from a lovely and very patient member the other day. Something on our website wasn't working. No big deal, I thought. Flush the cache, update some plugins, we will be good to go. Except fixing that tiny issue turned into a full-on archaeological dig through years of forgotten website baggage. To make the change, I had to reconfigure some WordPress plugins. That broke our theme. Fixing the theme messed with the content I was trying to fix for the member, and around it went. It was an Ouroboros of website hell. And while I was poking around, I discovered we had a lot of stuff that we didn't need. Custom fields that don't feed into anything, custom post types that nobody has touched in years, code for 3 previous billing platforms, 2 old courseware platforms, and a forum that has been offline for about a decade. And of course, parts of the current website are precariously perched on these hidden antiques, and I'll open up even more unspeakable horrors if I delete some of them. Now, it's probably not your website, but I know a lot of firms have all kinds of technological and operational baggage that was hopefully useful at some point in the past, but is now a liability. It's just sitting there waiting to rear its ugly head when something breaks, and what should be a quick fix becomes weeks of untangling a rat's nest of processes and undocumented connections. Or you decide to try to do a little cleaning and find that a seemingly trivial tap on a checkbox leads to chaos in your document storage or automation tool or something else. Back in the paper file days, the smart law firms had a system for labeling files for disposal after a set number of years. That made sense when boxes were eating up office space, but when that same delete after X years thinking got ported over to digital storage, which it did in a lot of practices, was that still the right move? For some types of records, maybe. For others, storage is cheap, and the complex labeling and tagging systems that made the jump weren't solving a real problem. They were just something that was kept alive because it's the way things were always done before. Just because something made sense a year or two ago or a system or two ago doesn't mean it makes sense now. You also need to evaluate projects, both new and old, on whether or not they were actually useful at any point. We are great at collecting things that we think will be helpful, and then we forget why we did it in the first place. Maybe you started recording every intake call for training purposes. Have you actually listened to those calls in the past year, or are they just sitting on a server somewhere waiting to make headlines in the next big corporate data breach? Having set this up at our practice, I can tell you that we listened to them for about the first 2 weeks we trained a new intake employee, and that was it. So maybe these make sense at first, and then AI call summaries are sufficient for everything after that. The same thing goes for extra fields in tools like your bookkeeping software, marketing automation software, practice management software, and everything else. I am absolutely terrible about this. I want to add a new field for everything. And then, a year later, as I am spending 15 minutes scrolling to the bottom of a client record to get the 3 pieces of information that actually matter, I ask myself if it was really necessary to create fields for the client's favorite candy and a checkbox to indicate that he or she had seen all of the Harry Potter movies. Maybe that is important in your practice, but even seemingly harmless additions like fields you don't use in your software end up complicating things. Not just when people are trying to figure out where to input the actually relevant data, but they inevitably end up being hard to track gremlins that take forever to unwind. Like when you realize that the silly favorite candy field was being used in your client onboarding workflow and ended up breaking because Chuck, bless his heart, likes chocolate-covered raisins, which are A, disgusting, and B, obviously not candy since we aren't Victorian ragamuffins, and it broke the whole darned workflow. That's the nature of these problems. You don't know what's going to cause the issue, and the more places you have to look, the harder they can be to solve. And at the risk of sounding downright untechnological, I am also going to suggest weighing up the cost and benefit of automation versus engagement. Because there are, in fact, times where we automate things not because they are better off being automated, but because we just don't want to do them. Automation is better than nothing, but it's far worse than true engagement. And sometimes we end up going backwards. We are antisocial weirdos, and we would rather configure an automated email to make the client click a happy face or a sad face icon to indicate how he's feeling today, kind of like the kiosk at an airport bathroom, instead of texting or calling. Now, this is better than not knowing how the client feels at all, and I'm only bringing up this example because it is something we did, but we are often most eager to automate the things where the ROI for a little personal attention is huge, instead of the things we should be automating, like drafting and shuttling data back and forth between applications. So even when there is no looming disaster from a system breaking, it's worth evaluating if you are getting the outcome you're after. Think about something like asking for a Google review. We hate asking clients for reviews, so we buy a service that automatically emails them asking for a review. All we have to do is click a button, or maybe it fires off automatically when their case is closed. It's like we're living in the future. But the client swipes to archive that email faster than a LinkedIn notification they can't figure out how to unsubscribe from. Spending 5 minutes on the phone and getting the client to agree in person to leave that review is likely to be a lot more effective, but you'll only know that if you're keeping an eye on it. The bottom line, do your pruning before something breaks. Something will always break, but the cleaner and simpler things are when it does, the quicker the fix will be. Evaluate what's running, what's actually being used, and what could be streamlined or eliminated. The goal isn't necessarily to have less technology and automation, it's to have the right technology and automation, configured for the way your firm actually works today, not the way it worked 3 payment processors, 2 courseware platforms, and 1 box of chocolate-covered raisins ago. I'm Ned Days, and that's your tech tip.
And now for your moment of concise advice. There's a Reid Hoffman quote that I keep coming back to. It goes like this: all startups are pirates, but then you want to become a navy. Everybody loves the pirate part, scrappy and wild and rule-breaking. But most of us, we don't stop to think about what it actually means to grow, to change, to become a navy. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Pirates and navies, they have a lot in common. They both exist to conquer. They both take what they want. One does it with swagger and desperation, and the other does it with structure and firepower. But the outcome, it's the same. The target is sunk. The trick here is knowing with clarity and certainty which one you are. Are you a pirate or are you a navy? Where do you stand? And once you know where you are, you need to not pretend to be the other. When my law firm was a team of 5, everyone understood where we stood. We understood the mission. You do the work, you bring in the money, you keep the lights on. Every action connected to the survival of our law firm. We were small, but then we grew. And by the time we hit 50 people, things got a little weird. People started making polished reports about finances and supervising the font choices. Some of them, they had no idea about how their day connected to our payday. They weren't lazy. They were just playing Navy without ever having been pirates. And when that happens, that's how you stall out. I see it all the time. Small teams acting like big corporations, spending hours on org charts and job titles when They're just one slow month away from bouncing the payroll checks. Or at the other extreme, I've seen bigger firms that are still running like a startup. They're improvising hires. They're discounting out of fear. They're changing pricing based on vibes. Now, you don't need to be perfect, but you need to be appropriate for your stage, for where your law firm is now. If you're a pirate, own it. Do the work that brings in gold. Stop worrying about polish, hustle, improvise, take messy action. You can get fancy later once you've survived that initial voyage. And if you're at the other end of the spectrum, if you're leading something stable, if you are becoming a Navy, well then, stop acting like you just washed ashore. You don't need chaos anymore. You need systems and discipline and accountability. That's what keeps the whole thing from capsizing. Ultimately, it's not about being scrappy or about being sophisticated. It's about staying aligned with the mission. Growth, it tempts you to forget. You start thinking that your job is to manage instead of to win, to look good instead of to get results. Inside the programs in Rosen Institute, Vision Quest and Marketing Accelerator and Flywheel and Intake, we share tactics, but the truth is they only work if you use the right tactics, the tactics that match your actual position, not the position that you romanticize, not the one that you fear, the one that you're in right now. The wrong advice at the wrong time, it's not just useless, it's dangerous. So today I encourage you to take a breath, to look around. Ask yourself, are you raiding ships or are you running a fleet? Are you still chasing your first wins or are you scaling the engine that got you there? There's no shame in either. Just don't confuse the two. That's your moment of concise advice. Wrapping up from London, thanks for spending a few minutes with me and Ned today. We hope you have a great weekend and an even better week next week. Keep plugging away, moving forward, and getting things done. You're on the right track. You'll get there, I promise. We're all in this together, and together we build better practices through better marketing, better management, and better technology. Until next time, I'm Lee Rosen.
Thanks for listening to Your Law Firm. Subscribe to the Friday File at roseninstitute.com and join thousands of lawyers focused on working on, instead of in their practices. You'll find safe, successful, actionable approaches for transforming your firm. Sign up for free at roseninstitute.com.